our next session here, we have two product experts that are going to talk about creation of new products using artificial intelligence. And remember, it's new products and how they use them in the design and delivery of their products. Our moderator here is going to be another one of our own great faculty members, Mark Thomas. Mark is Director of Product for Reddit, their developer platform and data API teams. He's a lecturer here, focused on product management for software companies. He and I co-teach the tech immersion for incoming MBAs. Prior to Reddit, Mark led product at Snap and also at Google. He's got a bachelor's in computer science from UC Berkeley. He's got a master's degree in computer science here from UCLA and an MBA here from UCLA Anderson. Mark is going to provide some context, and then he's going to be introducing our two speakers, Paul and Marilee. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back in Cornhole on this side of the stage. Now, one of the most difficult questions that I ask my students, and it's deceptively difficult in my class, is how would you improve Gmail? This is a classic product improvement question, and it's one that is favored by product management interviewers, particularly those at Google. I certainly asked it quite a bit when I was there. And it's the kind of thing that can take 20 minutes or 20 months to answer well. So I was very curious this year to encourage my students to use generative AI to answer that question in their one paper that they had to write. So it was interesting because most of the responses came back with suggestions like, you should have a calendar integration or make search better, which are features that either already exist or are too vague to be useful. So it was very clear that they took the prompt and dropped it into ChatGPT or Bard and copied and pasted it right before the class started. So there were other students, though, that showed their work, and it was very interesting. They first asked one of these tools to summarize what the most common problems are with Gmail. Then they asked to come up with a framework for prioritizing across them. Then they asked it to help them pick one of the top problems and start brainstorming. After a bit of editing and refinement, some even went so far as to use image generation tools like DALL-E or Midjourney to start actually creating prototypes that they could get feedback on. So what I've learned is, I think of generative AI right now as kind of like an instrument that a skilled hand can do with it very impressive things. And so knowing how, when, and where to use generative AI in your product development, in your work, can make all the difference. And I'm pleased to introduce two experts that will lead us in a conversation here about how to do just that. So I'm going to start with Dr. Marilee Nika. Marilee is an award-winning AI PM leader and one of the world's top AI educators with over 10 years of experience building AI products at Google and Meta. Marilee earned a Ph.D. in machine learning at Imperial College in London and is also an author, a TED AI speaker, and an executive fellow at Harvard Business School. She has now founded the AI Product Academy that aims to cultivate a new generation of AI product leaders with her AI PM Bootcamp, which has reached thousands of students to date. Welcome, Marilee. Thanks for joining us. I'd also like to introduce Paul Krakow. Paul is the Director of Product for YouTube Shorts Discovery and has over 20 years of experience in the tech industry. He's a seasoned product management executive with a track record of building and growing consumer software businesses at scale. Previously, he served as head of product for machine learning and personalization at Amazon Music, where he led a team of product managers across the world and were responsible for personalizing experiences of millions of Amazon Music customers. He has also held leadership roles at Yahoo, Savvy Technology, and Focus and Hammonds. Paul received a dual bachelor's in electrical engineering and engineering sciences from Dartmouth. Welcome, Paul. All right. Okay, so I think we're all very well aware of the potential of generative AI. Where I'd like to start the conversation is just talking about some of the concrete examples of where we see it disrupting our world today. And I'd like to also try to talk a little bit about, if we can generalize outside of the specific examples, let's talk about like, what are some of the patterns we see? For example, I see generative AI doing three things very, very well. The first is summarization, where you can take large corpuses of information, summarize it down. And this is an example, if you've seen those Amazon reviews, or the Amazon reviews, where they summarize thousands of customer reviews into a tweet-length summary. Another example I would say is assistance, where I'd say something like Microsoft's Copilot, which provides sort of a super autocomplete for coders within their VS Code tool, allows them to be more efficient coders. There's also Conmingo, which is Khan Academy's one-to-one tutoring service that they provide for free. And then prototyping is another, which I sort of alluded to, where I'd say Midjourney, for example, has enabled users to create studio-quality trailers for movies they'd love to see. So my question, and Paul, I'll start with you, is where have you seen disruptive new products enabled by generative AI?
Sure. I mean, I live with it every day, right? The one I was going to talk about, which most people probably haven't gotten on their radars because it was kind of, we did it somewhat quietly, was back in the fall, YouTube released Dream Tracks. And so this was a partnership between YouTube and some very prominent artists, so like Charlie Puth, T-Pain, Sia, where we licensed the rights to allow a very specific set of creators who we handpicked to generate songs about basically whatever they wanted within the confines of what we allow on YouTube, in the voice and the style of these artists, and then to produce shorts using that generative AI. And what was interesting about that, because it's not like the big, everyone's hearing about it, generative AI stuff, but I think it's one of the few examples today of a serious business trying to figure out how to apply generative AI in a space that maybe is a little unsure about how it fits in. What does this mean for the creators? What does this mean for this industry? How is this going to work out? And I was very proud of both how we got it out, how quickly we got it out, how well it was received, and how well, for what it was, it worked in the real world. We definitely let that one out and then saw what happened, and it ended up turning out fairly well for what it was.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And Marilee, I'm curious where you've seen examples of Gen AI disrupting products.
I actually keep discovering new use cases every single day. Yesterday, I opened my fridge. I had no idea what to cook. And I'm like, oh, well, I have some pork here. I have some mayo and some corn. It spit out an actual recipe that it made up. It told me how to cook it. I did it. Turns out paprika, pork, and mayo don't go together. But it was interesting. We did it. But I'm just fascinated by the concept of having these knowledge on the go. So at Meta, I worked on a project called AI Agents. And if you go on WhatsApp and click on New Conversation, you have a lot of personas to choose from who you can chat with. And it's amazing because you have on the go this knowledge base that's very specialized. It's the equivalent of custom GPTs. And I really, really love this. Moreover, I love the voice function. So let's say I'm driving, let's say I see something on the road, there's a widget on like iPhone that you can press and ChatGPT will open up and you can just talk to it and it will respond back to you with a natural voice. My example is I found an injured pigeon outside of my house and I took a photo, I uploaded it, and I'm like, hey, what's wrong? Who can I call? And ChatGPT was like, oh, here's the number, here who's open, do not touch it, do not move it, it may be hurt, here's what you should feed it. And it's just this everyday aspect that your life can change, like every single aspect of it. And of course, I have a lot of examples from the professional perspective. My profession as a PM, right? Every part of the product development lifecycle is changing, but we can talk more about this. But yeah, I'm just so excited with all these use cases I discovered.
Yeah, and so I think Paul, you introduced a new sort of class that I think we're just now starting to. Of use cases that we're just now starting to explore, which is content creation and publication. And then I think, Marilee, what I'm hearing is that there's so much depth to the assistance use case that itself could simply transform every aspect of our lives. Mm-hmm. Now, Paul, I want to dive a bit deeper into the content creation aspect. I, for one, I saw on Reddit, of course, some Mid-Journey created trailers. One was for Star Wars, if it were directed by Wes Anderson, and another which was stills from a fictional Aliens the musical. Now, as a fan of both of these, of all of this stuff, that thrilled me. And as you mentioned, Google has been, and YouTube have been leaning into this challenge where, well, as a copyright holder, I might not be so thrilled. So I want to dive a bit deeper and probe about how do you feel about generative AI's use for content creation, especially now that you've had some evidence of its success?
Yeah, both professionally and then I like playing around with these tools too. I maybe not surprisingly, sit in the camp of these are tools, right? And people can do good things with them, people can do bad things with them. The rules of the road really haven't changed. I, myself, even in my world in YouTube, I can't tell you how many times people I work with who are very, very smart, very capable, say, I can't create, I'm not a creator. And that pains me. Like, everyone should be able to create. And I do think one of the main advantages of these generative tools is that they can make really high quality professional creation accessible to a much broader pool of people. And YouTube is based on this. The more people we have creating, the more content we get, the more topics we can cover well, the more we can meet the niche interests of all the people that we serve. And that gets very much into the heart of what I do in discovery and recommendations.
I love that so much. And I think it's so important that I found myself, I've told the story to myself my entire life. So it might be too late for me. I'm not a creative person. I'm not a visually creative person. But maybe after this talk, I'm going to go make my first trailer for a movie that I could make, or I'm going to do that animation I've always been thinking about, but I could never do. Dancing's still off the table for me. But this idea of empowering people and unlocking the potential, to me, that's one of the most exciting things here is this idea that a group of people that maybe haven't had access to this now can do something tremendous with it. It's very exciting. Okay, so my next question is around the adoption of generative AI. So obviously, ChatGPT, one of the most, I think the most quickly adopted product in history, okay, on the consumer level. I'm curious about the adoption of generative AI at the enterprise level. And Marilee, I'll lead with you on this one. Do you feel like it's going fast enough? Or is it slow? And if so, why?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I feel that a lot of companies don't really understand GenAI. Obviously, they have the consumer use case. On the personal level, they've tried it, but they just don't know what to do with it. If you go on LinkedIn and Indeed and search for GenAI product manager role, all these companies are hiring for GenAI PMs, but in reality, I don't think they really know exactly what they can do. But this is amazing. It's an amazing time to live because it's the opportunity. Whoever jumps on this domain and blends product, GenAI knowledge, in 5 years, you'll be ahead. There are obviously tech and data first companies that are doing amazing work, right? Obviously big tech companies, but I see financial institutions that are trying to get into it. I see traditional companies in healthcare that are trying to get into it. And they reach out to me, to people that advise, and they're like, so what should we do? What can we do? And this is why we have workshops and ideathons like the one we're going to have later, where you essentially say, hey, here's what GenAI can do, which is what you listed, and tell us, what do you want to achieve and how can you blend the two? So I think it's very, very slow. And the reason is there isn't enough talent that can blend this and find the product market fit for GenAI products. Number two, I don't think companies are doing a good job capturing their data, right? Because you need data in order to be able to produce. And then number three, I think people are still hesitant. They don't understand kind of the potential, and they're waiting for the big companies to come in and show, hey, you can do this so that they can follow. But yeah, I feel it's slow. I don't know what your perspectives are.
Yeah, no, that feels about right. I at least within my world, definitely encourage my team to play around with Bard, try to solve problems, like actual work problems with it. Sometimes we do. A lot of times we do it the old-fashioned way. One thing I was going to mention to this broader group, I took a year off, and it happened to give me some time right after the ChatGPT announcement up to starting a job in April of last year to really get hands-on and play with this stuff and dig in deep. And I wouldn't have had as much time to do that had I been working full time. And I definitely saw as I got back into the work world, I had a little bit, at least in that 6-month window, of an advantage over my peers in that I got to spend more time on it. So again, much like I tell my own teams, get hands-on, play with stuff, figure out what it can do and what it can't do, and how you can get it to do better things. We're still in a pretty early stage of all of this, and it's probably going to be, 5 or 10 years before it really starts to become just de rigueur. Everyone does it. Maybe you don't even know that you're doing it because you have nice services built on top of it, and some of the complexity is hidden from you.
With that said, there are companies that did an amazing job. Like I really, I'm so inspired by Adobe and what they did. So they embedded GenAI throughout their products, and they are, to me, the perfect example of someone that has found a product market fit. So product market fit is these 3 bubbles. Number 1, make sure you build something that is feasible from a technical perspective. Number 2, that it's viable from a business perspective, meaning people would pay money. And number 3, that it's going to be desirable by users. And what they did is they just provided this feature for current users they had. So let's say I'm a designer and I have a subscription to design products on Adobe. And I get a client that's like, hey, I want an invitation for a kid's party that has a little turtle that has box gloves and it's called Bob or something like this. They'll do that, they'll generate the image. This image will be added in a little template for an invitation for a kid's party. They will do minimum work, tweaking it here and there, and they'll quickly produce something amazing for the end customer. So they'll be creative, they'll be more than happy to pay the fee every month. And the client is going to be very happy because what they get will be unique and very, very creative. So I just love what they've done. And I'm sure other companies will follow at the same pace. I was looking at Pinterest was building their GenAI org as well. And I think Pinterest is fantastic. Like imagine saying, hey, this wall is empty. Can you come up with ideas for this wall? And just seeing different options. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is such an important point for the room of future business leaders here. I can't remember an opportunity like the one we have right now. There are so many people that are already at these large tech companies, myself included, that don't have the time, the energy, or whatever to really dive so deeply into this. We are hungry. We're hungry for fresh blood that understands it, that has gotten their hands dirty with it, that's done even things like, creating an invitation with stuff. I mean, I haven't done that, and I work in this space, so there's such an opportunity for the people in this room to leapfrog and also help make that transition, is what I'm hearing. So I alluded to this earlier, and Marilee, you also brought it up, so I'll start with you on this one as well. But generative AI isn't just a feature, it can also help us build products. And so I'm curious if you've seen GenAI used well in the product development process, and how do you envision product manager roles changing in the future with the growing use of generative AI?
Very good question. I had people reach out to me and say, hey, is my job going to be okay? Am I going to be replaced? And my answer is product manager role is not going to be replaced, but product managers that leverage AI will replace product managers that do not. And for every profession, it's no longer a luxury, it's no longer an option. If we embrace it, we'll be great. If we do not, we'll stay behind because other people are already embracing it. The other thing I'm saying is that all product managers will be AI product managers in the future because of the nature of this. I was just playing around with custom GPTs, and I'm like, okay, what could I build that could save time from my day-to-day? And I built a little tool that generates a PRD for me. I had the template of a PRD I use usually. I uploaded it, and I'm like, hey, here's the headers, here's the domains. And I uploaded it, and I said, okay, so from now on, I'm going to give you a little product area and a little blurb of like 3 lines, who I'm working for, what this is about. And I pressed, and it literally spit out like 6 pages worth of a PRD that would have taken me 3 weeks with tables and data and market research and proposed prioritized personas that I should focus on, competitor analysis with a matrix, and I was mind blown. So this is going to speed our work up. And it's amazing because you will focus your cognitive load on things that matter other than just Googling, trying to figure out what other competitors are doing. So yeah, in the tedious stuff like documentation, it really helps. Number 2, in ideation, very, very impactful, very powerful. It just goes places that you haven't even thought about. Now, I'm not saying it's going to replace the intuition of a PM or your gut feeling, if you will, but it's going to give you a huge head start. And ever since I started adopting it, I feel I'm an empowered PM. Like, I produce ideas like this. I produce Ph.D.s here and there. Yeah, it's been super.
Yeah, and Paul, I think I had a friend of mine at dinner the other night mention that he said he didn't think that producing things may not be humans' core competency. It may be something else. It may be the creative or the editing. And I'm curious, coming back to this question of how do you see generative AI working itself into the product development process, especially in the world of content creation that you work in? Where do you see that going?
I might answer more from the perspective of product managers and the job, but I can get to the content creation side as well. Because something I was thinking about as Marilee was talking, one of the, I think, key advantages that the LLMs today already bring to the table is that for folks who maybe English isn't their first language, brilliant otherwise, but communication in this tongue is not something that they're strong at, it levels the playing field. And as someone who's, I was flying to more countries than I knew existed right at the beginning of my career. I've had very, very smart people reporting to me from many, many different countries, many, many different languages. And I've always kind of served as the language gap because English is the de facto language of business. It was just this completely unfair advantage I've had through my career. I think this levels that playing field today, just done. Like, if you want to get well-written documents, you want to get well-written emails, et cetera, you can get that without having to spend decades improving your English and getting to the point of being as facile as a native speaker. What it can't do, though, is read the room and understand what's going on and understand, getting back to the context points from earlier, but in the sense of the real world, the context of this is this group of human beings trying to make decisions. Here are these things that are happening in the real world, and we have tough trade-offs that we have to make, et cetera. So I feel like maybe that's where, at least today, where the tech's at, the human piece is really, really critical, is understanding the other humans and how that's playing out. On a creative side, I actually am of the mind that there's nothing preventing generative AI from being genuinely creative on its own. I think it comes down to how you build the systems. There is creativity in system building. There is creativity in setting the right objectives for these things, et cetera. But I think we will see that. So I don't know that that's necessarily the thing. And I am a musician. Much as I love the creative act and I love being able to do that, I don't know that that's necessarily what makes us unique.
I was reading a paper, and it said that it takes 20 minutes on average to get into a point where you can be the best, cognitively produce and write the documents and go. What you say is why I love ChatGPT. It's because it's always at that state that it takes 20 minutes for you to get to. No matter when you wake up, you go to bed, it's there at this perfect state. I'm Greek originally, you hear my accent. I create a lot of content on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not, 5 lines, it's huge lines with bullet points and all these things. And it knows my style, the style I write with. And it will speak in my voice, but it's always on. It's just fascinating. I'm loving it. But that's a very good point for the different language, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. This is a bit of a frivolous example, again, from Reddit, of course. But there was an exchange between a user and ChatGPT where the user was trying to generate images of a hot dog, but make it increasingly hotter. So it would start it off, there's a hot dog, and then it had steam, and then it had flames, and then it was at the center of a supernova. And the user's like, that's not even that hot. Can it be hotter? And then ChatGPT expressed some frustration saying, here it is at the center of the Big Bang. And it literally cannot be hotter than this. And then the human user says, 2 Big Bangs? Comes right back. Here it is at the center of 2 Big Bangs. And then it goes on from there to now it's at a conflagration of multiverse Big Bangs and so on. It's like, and then ChatGPT at the end just kind of gets kind of frustrated. But I think there is something here, Paul, that you were touching at here. There is a symbiosis here. I don't know what it is. It may not be imagining what it could look like to have this hot dog in the middle of the center of a conflagration of Big Bangs, but it could be that intuitive leap of 2 Big Bangs. So I think that's really interesting to explore. We don't know. I don't think we know yet. Okay, so the other thing that is a constant issue, I think, is that generative AI is a silver bullet. It may be the silver bullet for everything. It may actually be that. We don't know for sure. But as a product manager now, it's difficult to know how and when it can be used. So, I would love to be in every meeting and just say, oh, we'll just use GenAI for that. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm curious, as an educator of AI, how do you think about helping your students understand when and where GenAI is the right tool for the job?
Very good question. I posted on LinkedIn this little graph the other day because I get this question a lot. And what people don't understand, a lot of people say AI and they mean GenAI, but I want people to know that GenAI is only a little version of the AI ecosystem. So when we talk about AI in general, we talk about vision, machine learning algorithms for speech, robotics, perception, and all these things. GenAI is kind of a little bubble within that. Now, the next step would be AGI. Of course, I had to mention this. Everyone talks about artificial general intelligence, which is going to combine the machine learning aspect and GenAI. So we're going to have AI training AI, essentially. So that's where we're going to have the supercomputers, all these powers that we were talking about. Now, when it comes to the opportunity for GenAI, I want people to learn the traditional AI first. They need to understand how these models work. What is the training process? It's like wanting to play piano, like the cool songs, without knowing the classic music first. So that's kind of my perspective, and people seem to appreciate that. But yeah, I really want to tone the traditional AI, like the importance of it. It's just crucial for being able to produce and be an AI PM or AI professional.
Now, Paul, you have a tremendous amount of experience moving through the history of AI. And we had a good conversation about this earlier. On that, I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about what's different about GenAI from traditional AI and machine learning.
It's a lot more accessible. I mean, it almost counters Marilee's point a bit in that you don't have to get into the weeds of how this stuff works. The average, I think this is well evidenced by ChatGPT's explosive growth last fall. The average person can get pretty miraculous results out of these systems without knowing how they work. I myself do like knowing how everything works under the hood, so I don't disagree with Marilee, but that's kind of out of reach for most people. What I would say, though, getting back to the sort of the origin of the question, like when to use this, when not, it's no different than any other tech. I mean, what I was thinking of was really early in my career, I was working with semiconductors and we had fancy timing circuits, blah, blah, blah. There was all this crazy math to figure out, could this chip solve this problem or that? And when I was first dealing with that, because I was an applications engineer, I'd actually go crank out the numbers every single time. And it was a pain in the butt and it took forever. And I realized, oh wait, I can just write a program to go through every combinatorial possibility, run it overnight, it'll spit out a table with all the correct answers, and I no longer have to do that. And it was one of those moments where, okay, doing the harder thing with the more complex thing actually saves me time and makes it easier. And I would say, especially now when there's so much hype about GenAI and everyone's trying to apply it to everything, I mean, maybe, but probably not. It's probably not the right answer for most problems. There's probably an easier way. So what you should be looking for, both, first of all, get that hands-on experience, understand what it can and can't do. You can get an intuitive sense for these things pretty easily if you just push on them and try to force them to do things that they can't do. And don't look for, okay, I have GenAI, where's the problem? Have your problems that you're trying to solve, understand your business, understand your customers, et cetera. And if there are problems of the form where you need to generate something new, you need to create something in a scalable way, and lots of people to do it, need to do it lots and lots of times, maybe GenAI is the right answer. but probably not in most cases right now. It's still pretty early and pretty raw.
One of the interesting things, just a quick follow-on that, I tend to agree with you. I also think that actually could change with the next model update. This is one of these technologies where we don't know how big of an improvement ChatGPT-5 is going to be over GPT-4. In fact, if you search for GPT-5 right now, I saw in the Google search results, they had accidentally a link to GPT-5 and it said at the bottom, it said generalized AI like outputs or something. And I clicked on it and it was a 404 error. And I was like, shoot. But so how do you think about, okay, I think this is true today. How do you think about how fast that can change? Does that change how we should approach generative AI as a technology?
Marilee, would you like to go first? I tend to talk too much.
I love this. This is interactive. This is interesting. Let's see. Go for it. I have a lot of thoughts.
Okay. So the pace of change. Definitely looking back over my career, it feels like things are getting faster, which I generally like. I was reading the GPT-2 papers back in whatever that was, 2018, 2017. So I certainly had this stuff on my radar when it was still kind of like lab researchy kind of stuff and hadn't really gotten to the point of being impressive. It certainly caught my attention when GPT-4 made as many advances as it did, as fast as it did. I think where we're at right now is there's a whole bunch of other players in industry who are racing to push that boundary and get different flavors of these types of services that are kind of at that level while they're still investing in getting to the next level. I think the actual limiting factor probably is hardware these days, like just getting the chips to run these models. That's ultimately, I think, what's going to be the bottleneck for the next few years, and that's going to be why there's only a handful of companies that really get these things right and really get them working to the level of quality that I think is going to be transformative. So I don't think we're going to be, a year from now saying, boy, whew, we missed that one. It is going to take some time for this to roll out, but I see the horizons continuing to shrink. I see the time frames between this transformative technology and that one getting smaller. And as like a major point of reference in industry, the one that most people I talk to uses what was the last big one like this? It was everything going mobile, right? And that was, a decade plus ago. So maybe we hit the next, oh wow, didn't see that coming 5 years from now or 7 years from now.
Decade is not that long, to be perfectly honest, because that's when I was sitting in those seats. Marilee, anything to add to that?
So it's interesting because I see myself from the side where we launch AI and it's like, hey, we have this new version, we want to roll it out and see how it performs. But a lot of people are used to this version. How do we, go about it? So that's an interesting thing. But myself as a consumer, maybe I can touch on that. There are a lot of people that are very comfortable when, they know everything. They take their time to understand how things go, build businesses based on technologies. But when it comes to AI, when it moves so fast, you just you don't feel safe. So I guess my advice to people is embrace this uncertainty that AI brings. Don't overinvest in where we're at now, because next week, this other amazing thing can happen. Example, some people I was advising created a startup that was creating a custom GPT on their own platform. And then, of course, OpenAI created the possibility for everyone to do that. And their business just died down. So don't overinvest. Expect that things will change very, very fast. Embrace it. It's just amazing times because you don't know what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, I love the embrace the uncertainty. This is with uncertainty comes opportunity for sure. Okay, I'm going to move to Slido. We have quite a few. The first question here: as a product manager, how do you measure the quality of GenAI outputs and implement guardrails?
I guess I can talk to this one. I have had a hand in these sorts of things. Okay. There are a number of ways in which you can put constraints on the generative systems before you're even getting to the point of looking at outputs and trying to judge whether this is good enough, et cetera. So a lot of effort goes into that. Any service that you're playing with, even like if you download Stable Diffusion or you get the leaked version of Llama or whatever, there's still structure in there. It's not just kind of unfettered doing whatever the model wants to do. As you apply it to your product space, on a certain level, you don't have any different constraints than you have with any other product effort, right? A lot of the the rules that we had in YouTube of what we accept for a product and what we're willing to put out in the world were applied directly when we started playing with generative AI products. I think maybe one of the interesting aspects of it to think about from a product manager's perspective is you're taking on as a business, you're taking on a little more responsibility than you do when you just put a product out in the world and real human beings go and do things with your product. Because now you're in this gray area of, well, was it the human being who prompted it to do this thing that wanted it to have this outcome, or was it the model that your company built that got it to do this outcome? So I'd say that there's another layer of responsibility and making sure you're doing the right thing in the world that you need to keep in mind as you put generative products out there. And there's a sort of a new class of risks, but an awful lot of what you would do anyways to make sure you're putting good products out there and not making the world a worse place still apply very directly and apply very neatly to generative AI, at least in my experience.
What I have to say is that AI on its own is not a product. So
yeah.
I can't tell you, hey, measure accuracy, because it doesn't apply. When you embed AI in a product, then the rules of product health metrics apply. So why are you doing it? This is the right question to ask. Do you want to increase retention for users? Do you want to increase satisfaction, happiness, engagement? So measure the primary product metric you care about, because that's going to give you a good indication as to whether this integration is working. So don't forget about the product health metrics. And on the secondary level, measure, of course, anything on the AI and GenAI perspective. But that's a really interesting distinction to always remember that if it's a part of the product, you measure the reason that it's there in the first place and why, and how people are interacting with it and if they're enjoying it.
I think it's really interesting. There's traditional guardrails we can put in place. In some respects, it's the same thing we've always done. Another friend of mine said that he treated all of the Gen A products he was working with as like an intern. And he said he kept giving that intern raises when he learned to trust it more and more. And today he was sort of at this point where he said, honestly, if ChatGPT charged me $500 a month, it'd be worth it, because I've trained mine to the point where I trust them to handle the things I need them to do. And so it's sort of interesting, I think, different from how you can put these guidelines into like Gmail as a product. When I first used it, it just did the thing very well. Here, there's like also a level of trust that you have to build between you and the tool. And there's going to be some uncertainty because they're probably going to mess up sometimes, right? But so does Gmail, and so do the algorithms behind it. But it's still like an intuitive guardrail that humans are very good at sort of working with. Okay, I think maybe I have time for one more. Okay, so let's see. Oh, they swapped around. Okay, so with the increased ability to work faster, like in the PRD example, Mary Lee, you gave, will companies prioritize employee productivity or their well-being?
I, for one, prioritize well-being. But I expect my team to be productive.
It's interesting. There are companies that ban being able to access Claude and Bard and ChatGPT for their employees. And I don't think they should be doing this. It's because they say, hey, this is going to affect productivity and so on. There are other cases where the employees will upload confidential information on ChatGPT saying, here's what we're building. It's going to be called this. This is the hardware, creatability. Obviously, you want to avoid that. But yeah, I think people should embrace it. I think productivity is definitely what we want to prioritize for.
Yeah, and maybe a less pat answer is, in any business environment, you're going to be competing with other people. It's just what it is. And the folks who know how to do their job well and do it quickly are going to have advantages over people who don't move as quickly. I don't think that this is necessarily going to make things worse. Matter of fact, if anything, raise your hand if you hate email and it's a pain in the butt and it takes way too much of your time. Yeah, I think it's going to make life better. But we're humans. We're going to compete with each other.
I think, I think it's also interesting to think about whether or not there's a max capacity for what a human can do, how much energy you have. You might be able to still put the pedal to the metal, but now you can do a lot more with that time, with whatever time you have. That's sort of what I'm hearing. So I think that's all we've got. Paul, Marilee, thank you so much. This has been an excellent conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. Good job. Excellent. Let me thank the three of them again. Again, a lot of learnings here. On one side, all the optimism about the intersection of product and AI. Paul saying there's nothing that stops AI from being creative, but a lot of warnings here about the number of companies that don't use it, don't understand it, the number of individuals that don't, and the rate of change that will be highly problematic. A couple last comments on this. When Paul talked about democratization, how AI is going to create better service provision at lower costs, that to me says a lot about where the prospects are. The other thing I just want to highlight is what he said about what AI cannot do. Because all of us that are in a business school and getting a graduate degree and all that, he said that the machine cannot read the room, cannot understand individuals well enough. And that really is an important area for us to master as we kind of move up in our career and the capability of AI gets better. We are going to take a 10-minute break to keep on schedule. 11:51 we will come back. 11:51.